Hello and welcome everybody. We have opened up the floodgates and people are streaming in. It's fantastic to have you all with us today, joining the CPDSO for another weekly webinar. I can see already a couple of videos on. If you can please just turn off your videos, we much appreciated. It is for, yeah, if we can just get those off, that would be much appreciated. I'm going to cover that in a second anyway. We've still got more people coming through. Welcoming you all. We have people coming through from around the globe today, which is fantastic. We've got some people from Asia, some people from Africa, from around Europe and the Americas. So welcome everyone. If you're staying up late, if you're waking up early to be with us, it's very much appreciated. We're happy to have you with us. Today we're going to have an amazing webinar. We've got two great minds with us today. We've got Anthony Maddalena and we have Simon West also. We're going to be looking at LinkedIn, how to create a winning LinkedIn profile that drives traffic and increases inbound prospect inquiries. It is a mouthful. I hope you have your minds open and you're ready to learn some real spectacular stuff today. LinkedIn is a powerhouse of a platform. We've got 675 million monthly users. That's a massive high street of people coming down, up and down those internet lines every month, 675, and we've also got 30 million companies, 94% of B2B marketers use it, and the question is it for you? I think the answer is definitely yes. Let's look and find out how you're going to make it for you. So moving on to the next slide. A warm welcome, like I said, we've got people from around the globe. A quick housekeeping. So like I've already mentioned, we are asking you, please turn off your cameras. I am going to have to do it manually, so please save me some time and effort from trolling through all of your cameras and switching them off from my side. If you could just turn those off for me, it would be much appreciated. We have 159 people with us now. Welcome again. Let's look at the chat etiquette quickly. So with the chat is open. You can communicate. What we do ask is that you keep it on topic. Keep it on topic. No comments about cats and dogs and the weather. We do have lovely weather here in the UK at the moment, so we are happy and we're smiling. That's the only mention I'm going to be making about the weather. So chat etiquette, please keep it to questions only, if possible. We are going to be questions only and also supportive comments. So you could say, great point, and so forth. We are going to be doing the Q&A section at the end of the session. So please do feed your questions into that chat and we'll get round to as many as possible at the end of the session. I think this one's going to be a very interesting session and a lot of questions to be answered. So I hope you're both ready, Anthony and Simon, to be on the hot seat today. So let's press on. I won't be too long with this part. We're just keeping our promises to our members and our wider audience. Responding to last week's webinar poll, we always ask, what do people want from us? What do people want to see? And last week, it was how to optimize your LinkedIn page to drive connections. So we called in Simon and Anthony to get you that information today. This week's poll coming up right now. We're going to run two quick polls before we get into things with Anthony kicking us off. So there should be a poll coming up on your screens right now. We are just asking, are you a member? Are you not a member? It's a simple enough one. And we want to find out how many webinars you've all been on so far during this lockdown period. So we're launching the poll now. If you could all just answer for me. The poll should be up on your screen now, guys. If you could all just answer that one for me, it would be much appreciated. It really does help us create and provide great content for you moving forward. The responses are going up, answering fast. I'll give you guys another 10 seconds because we do want to get into this one. I know Anthony's itching to go. 3, 2, and 1. Thank you, everybody, for that. Thank you. We've got one more poll quickly. We just want to know what topic you want us to focus on in the coming weeks. So if you could answer this one quickly for me too. It should be on your screens now. If you want to go ahead and hit one of those options for me, it would be much appreciated. We're ramping up fast. 5, 4, 3. If you're just joining us, there should be a poll on your screen. You've got 3 seconds to answer it. I know a few more people just joined. 3, 2, and 1. We're going to end that poll now. So thank you so much for participating. Like I said, it really does help us to curate the content and give you guys what you need and what you want. So moving forward, just a quick breakdown of today's session. We're going to have a 50-minute webinar split into 2 25-minute parts. Anthony's going to take the first 25 minutes-ish, and then Simon's going to come in and take the second 25 minutes. We are also going to be having a Q&A session at the end. So like I said, please do get your questions into that chat. If we can keep the chat clear, like I mentioned before, just so we can focus on those questions that are coming in. And also the slides will be recorded. The webinar will be recorded and with the slides, and the slides will be sent out also available after. So you do not need to ask that in the chat. It will definitely be available after this. Okay, so let's get into it. We have Anthony Maddalena from Powercall Training. I've got a good relationship with Anthony. I really do like the guy. I see him as a positive soul, driven by sales. He's the founder of Powercall Training. He's worked with the likes of Vodafone, Coutts & Co, and Thornton. Thornton, if you're online with us today, hello, they are one of our members. So just a quick hello if you're online. So I'm not going to take up any more time. Anthony's going to be talking about the profile, so how to lay out your profile and your company page. So please do have your pencils ready and your minds open. Like I said, without further ado, I'll pass you on to the man himself, Anthony.
Thank you very much, Daniel. That's great. Good to be here today, and thanks for inviting me onto this. But I thought just before I kick off, I'm just going to share a little bit of background about myself. I actually started off in a number of sales roles where, among other things, I needed to use social media in order to get the best from my sales team. At one stage, I had a sales team that was dispersed over 3 continents. So I had a team in Mumbai, a team in London, and a team in Boston. So you can imagine the logistical and cultural challenges were quite extreme. But I was able to get very good results in terms of putting in place some ideas, some techniques for really maximizing our LinkedIn pages and also the company page as well, which is what I'm going to obviously come on to in a moment. What's interesting is there are kind of mistakes, if you will, that people make that are unfortunate mistakes. And if we don't make them, if we try to avoid making these errors, we'll get much more from our LinkedIn activity. So without further ado, let's crack on. Right. So firstly, people say to me things like, I'd like to be a thought leader on LinkedIn. I'd like to position myself as an expert. I'd like to have lots of credibility, and I would like to have lots of inbound leads. But to try to position yourself as a thought leader on LinkedIn is something that requires us to put a bit of thought into it. And unless we have our profile in an optimized form, it's like putting the chicken before the egg. That is where it all begins. But even before that, even before we think about optimizing our profile, and we'll come on to some steps for you to do that in a moment, we need to think about the LinkedIn mindset. And what I mean by the LinkedIn mindset is there are 2 types of people that operate on LinkedIn, drains or radiators. And I know that may sound a little bit harsh, this language, but I'm really honest about this. Drains or radiators. So what is a drain? A drain is a person that is only out to get things for themselves. They're very self-oriented. They're someone who likes to grab your time and your attention, but they don't actually give very much back in return. And unfortunately, we see lots of them. Now, to give you an example of a drain, how many of you have perhaps had an experience of getting approached by someone that you don't know on LinkedIn who sends you an invitation and says, hey, let's connect. And you then connect with them. And moments later, they're sending you a sort of spammy email saying, great that we've connected. Why don't you think about, signing up to my service now? Do it by tomorrow, 20% off. And I don't know how you feel when that happens. One feels, I think, betrayed because this person reached out to you, think you're perhaps potentially going to have a rather interesting conversation with them. And of course, that doesn't happen. They're immediately trying to kind of sell at you. And these are the drains. And unfortunately, they are legion. On social media, not just on LinkedIn. And we don't want to be one of these people because for obvious reasons, they become unpopular very, very quickly. What we really want to be is we want to be something that's called, I call it a radiator. And as you can probably guess from the term, a radiator is someone that is always looking to share insights, to share knowledge. And those people, of course, become fairly magnetic on social media because they're always sharing knowledge and they're not out for what they can get, but rather they honestly are very customer, very client-centric. They're putting their audience at the heart of everything that they do. How can they serve that audience? What's interesting is that opportunities come their way. They magnetize these opportunities. Now, the first step in doing that is obviously having that a profile that's fully optimized, which we'll come on to in a moment. And from there, with the optimized profile, you then start sharing the right kind of content, which we'll talk about in a moment. So we want to be a radiator. Now, I'm one of those people that don't believe in working harder. I believe in working smarter. So in order to network in the right way on LinkedIn, we need to think about how can we help, how can we serve our audience? So with the right mindset, we really will enthuse other people. And we need to be thinking about the reasons why our customers should engage with us. What are our reasons for being on LinkedIn in the first place? So coming on to the next slide, creating a winning profile. Now, for me, my profile, and it's the same for you on LinkedIn, it's almost like your online brand, isn't it? I mean, we talk about company, we'll come on to company pages in a moment. That's your company brand, but you have your own brand. And you need to make sure that your brand is consistent with your company and with the values of your company. And what should happen if we get our profile right, it should behave in a magnetic way. It should draw prospects to us. People will start wanting to ignite conversations with us. We won't need to run it. There's a wonderful expression, is that Muhammad doesn't go to the mountain comes to Muhammad. And that's what you'll find if you optimize your profile in the right way. And why is it important to do that? Well, quite simply because people, our target audience, tend to use LinkedIn rather like a business directory, like a Yellow Pages. They will put particular kinds of specialisms or disciplines in there, and they will look to find specialists, leaders who are very well known in that field, or who can perhaps answer that question, and they will literally reach out to you and they'll want to connect with you. So that's what we need to remember. So really our object on LinkedIn should be to make ourselves as findable as possible. And then when people find us, what needs to happen then is that we need to demonstrate that credibility and to inspire action from them. In other words, we want to keep them there. We want to give them a roadmap as to what is the next step here. So coming on to the next slide. Okay, so what do we need to fully optimize our profile? Well, we need a photo, obviously. It needs to be professional, head and shoulders, and we need to perhaps dress like our target audience. Now, why do I say that? Why is it important to do that? Well, quite simply because good communicators, and let's face it, that's what good salespeople are, behave rather like chameleons. For those of you that know what a chameleon is, it's like a little lizard that will go into different environments and it changes the hue of its skin to fit in and to blend in with its environment. And so what that means in terms of our case here and in terms of good salespeople is that they will change their dress, their language, and the terminology that they use to fit in with their audience to create rapport as quickly as they can. Now, I understand for some of you that, like myself, actually, I mean, for trainers, it's very difficult, actually, because many of us have different types of sector that we work with, where the individuals in those sectors tend to dress in different ways. So, for instance, I work a lot with banks. Daniel mentioned earlier, I work with Coutts and Co. And they're, well, as you probably guess, everyone tends to wear a suit, or alternatively, I work with tech startups where people wear casual clothing. So it can be quite difficult. If it's difficult for you to decide how you should dress because your audiences are all so different, then just opt for smart casual. That's the easiest way. But the other thing, the main point that I want to share with you here is that you must have a photograph. It is not optional. It's absolutely vital. If you do not have a photograph, you are sabotaging your own profile. And I'm sorry, but people will not want to connect with you. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is that I often have clients that say, look, Anthony, work with me to optimize my profile. But just to let you know, I don't want to put a photo on there because there's not really any photos that are, kind of suitable for me. And I'm a bit shy anyway. And I say, well, I'm afraid it's non-negotiable until you get the photo on there. Anything that I do with you in terms of trying to write the copy for you for your profile or optimize it will not work, because it doesn't matter how much brilliant copy, how many brilliant insights and white papers you're sharing with your audience. If you don't have a photo, people simply do not trust you. It's as simple as that. There's a lot of fake IDs, actually, profiles on LinkedIn, and you run the risk of being seen as someone who isn't trustworthy. Also, if you have a small number of connections as well, it's also very dangerous. No photo and a small number of connections is sort of social media suicide, really, on LinkedIn. So, okay, so your name. All I want to share with you there is, please don't make the mistake that I did very early on before I knew better, was that I am a senior fellow of the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management, which meant that I could put in FINSTSM after my surname on LinkedIn. What that does, I'm afraid, is it makes you harder to find if you do that. So please resist the temptation to put any accreditations or anything like that after your surname. Of course, it's always good to talk about them. You can put them in the summary section, which is immediately below your headline. That's an absolutely perfect place to put it. But try to avoid putting those sort of initials and things after your surname. Not a good idea. Now, headline. Now, very often with our headline, we tend to just put our job title. So I often work with salespeople who will put, head of sales or sales manager, sales executive. But the thing is, we need to ask ourselves one very simple question. What does that actually really mean to our client base? Do our clients care that we're the head of sales? Do they even care that we hit the highest set of quotas in this year than anybody else did, and that we closed more sales and we made whatever it is for our company, $1 million for our company? Actually, our client base don't really care about that. Our client base really care about the areas that we can assist them with, the solutions that we can bring to them. So really what we're looking to do, I think, what a better thing I would encourage you to do is to think about putting a value benefit headline, okay, in that headline section, rather than simply putting your job title. In other words, what is it that you help your clients to do, so that if someone finds you, which you want that to happen, you want people to find you basically on LinkedIn. And by the way, you want to be in the top page of LinkedIn results, okay? Because people that might be searching for you that are free members, not premium, I'm a premium member myself, but a free member, they'll only get the top 100 people that come up. You want to be on that page basically, so that people know, aha, that's the expert, this is the person I need to go to. We need really for the headline a value benefit statement. So with me, a lot of what I do work obviously a lot as a LinkedIn trainer, but I also work, for instance, with cold calling as well. So I've got boosting companies, cold calling optimization. That's what I've got there, so that people know immediately the value that I can bring to them. So I'd encourage you to think about that. So also try to provide a context as to why they should contact you. What problems are you solving for them? Usually where our LinkedIn profiles, by the way, go down not well and we make mistakes is because we haven't really put ourselves enough in the shoes of our target audience. What are the problems they're experiencing? What's keeping them up at night? And how can we offer a solution for those problems? Now, the summary section is the section which is the main area of text directly underneath your headline. And it is the basis of why prospects will get in touch with you. In other words, people on social media, as we all know, have quite low attention spans. So the first bit of your LinkedIn profile that they'll see when it hopefully comes up on that first page of those results is what we want here is a nice keyword dense kind of paragraph which shows about the value that you can bring to your clients and that will address what I call the WIFM, the what's in it for me of the client. Now, crucial to our journey of trying to make our profile as findable as possible is that we need to think about including keywords. In other words, key search terms. So these are around the different specialisms that you offer. So for me, cold calling training or LinkedIn training is an example. So think about your particular specialism and try to put that in there. And what you need to do is, we'll come on to it in a bit more depth in a moment, but in this summary section, you need to have it mentioned at least once. You need to imagine that your LinkedIn profile is a little bit like if as I know many of you do, you've got your own businesses which will have a website. I'm sure most of you have a website. And that website is only so good as its SEO optimization, its search engine optimization. It's all one thing, isn't it? Spending thousands of pounds on a beautiful website. But if no one can find it on Google, what is the point of the website? Nothing, which is why many of us will hire SEO optimization experts to make sure that we have all the right things in there so that we hit the algorithms and we get where we need to be on Google. In fact, LinkedIn is exactly the same, except that you are the brand here. And you need to include as many searchable keywords in your profile as possible so that you then rank highly in the search results if someone were to search for you. And here in the summary, as I said before, we need just one example of those there. So let's then move on. Okay, so some reasons why your profile may not be working, not mentioning the problems that you solve. You need to tell your target market about the problems, pains, or predicaments that you solve for them. Otherwise, how will they know? And again, one of the biggest problems that I have with perhaps sales individuals, not a problem as such, but one issue is that they'll be very proud to trumpet their sales success. You know, they'll be very quick to say, hey, top performing salesperson in my team, overshot my targets by 90% and so on. But your clients don't care. It may actually turn your clients off. They may look, uh-oh, looks like another pushy salesperson. That's not what we want. Remember, we're actually trying to promote ourselves on LinkedIn as an expert, almost like a doctor, a consultant who can help someone with a problem. So we need to think about that. The best written profiles that I've seen on LinkedIn are amazing because they are almost like it's like you're putting up a mirror to the face of the client, the potential client. They'll look at what you've written and they'll go, my God, how does this lady or this man understand me to that degree? It's extraordinary. I really must get in touch. That's ideally what we want to happen. And then number two, not describing the people that you help. Do you mention who your clients are, your ideal client and the key criteria? If not, please try to add them to your profile. You'll notice that if you ever were to look at my profile, in the summary section, I've been very specific about the types of client that I want to work with. I've absolutely left no gray areas at all. Why have I done that? Quite simply because I want the individuals that I'm less interested in to some extent qualify themselves out. So if you look at my profile, you'll see I've asked a number of questions. Are you this type of person dealing with this type of problems? If so, I handle these sorts of issues, maybe we should speak. You know, and if you don't have those problems and you don't fall into that category, you know, I'm not obviously saying that, but the implication is it's quite fine for you to go away because I only have so many hours in the day and I can only deal with so many people. So just think of that and try to be quite specific about the type of people that you help, including obviously their job title and that sort of thing. Then coming on to the next slide. The next step, tell your prospects how to contact you with a call to action. People are begging to be led in a nice way. I mean that they're begging to know what the next step is. So perhaps include your telephone number. Now, I know this depends a lot. There are different cultural variations around the world as to whether or not one should or shouldn't put your telephone number on your profile. I personally do, because I run a global organization, and I'm quite happy to take calls at 9 o'clock at night from people in California, because that's what I do. But if you don't want to put your mobile number on there, you can always, of course, put your direct work line on there. But it just makes you look more approachable, and it means that if someone has a burning question that they want to ask you, and hopefully the way that you've written your profile will cause people to have questions for you, then that next step element is something that I see that missing a lot actually from profiles. Then number 4, what about the media section? Now, this is an area that is forgotten so much by so many of us actually on LinkedIn, because I do think that it's a very underutilized profile by a platform by many of us. But the media section appears directly under the summary, and it gives you the opportunity to host white papers, presentations, all sorts of collateral that may be interesting for your clients and may address their problems. And what you can think about doing, if you haven't already, is you can think about setting up a Slideshare account and add a free item of value on there. Slideshare, it used to be an independent organization, but actually it's now a wholly owned subsidiary of LinkedIn. And what's great about it is if you use it as a hosting platform in the media section for a valuable piece of collateral that you have, what happens is if you put a URL in there and some key search word terms, Google actually takes that up and spiders that out across the web. So automatically the algorithms are making your profile that much more powerful and influential on LinkedIn and to a wider audience. So it's an extremely good and useful thing to do. By free item of value, I simply mean something that is going to be of value to your clients in terms of answering their questions about a particular problem that they may face, but that is obviously free. You're not charging them for this information. You're simply acting like a radiator and giving information. So if you don't do that, if you haven't got anything on your media section, a really important part of positioning yourself as a thought leader is to do that. So I would encourage you to think about doing that. Okay, right. So let's now have a look at how to maximize your LinkedIn company page. So a big part of being, having an optimized company page is making sure that your company is being a radiator. It's just like your own personal page. What are the main questions, the main problems that your clients are handling right now? One area, for instance, I had a client last week, which is in the compliance space, and a lot of their clients are concerned about the impact of COVID-19. So if you think that that is likely to be an area that is going to keep your audience up at night, for many of us it certainly is, then do we have any content on there that demonstrates our ability to have answers to the typical kind of problems that might confront our clients, really, given that particular challenge? So we need to create content that demonstrates our company's expertise, obviously, in our field, that solves problems that our target audience experiences. And by the way, it's okay to share articles by other thought leaders. We mustn't worry about doing that. One issue that some of us have is, well, shouldn't it just be our own content? Actually, no. And the interesting thing is that can be detrimental, by the way, if you do that, because if you only, in a rather partisan way, share your own content, the problem is that people look at that and think, this company here, they're only really out for themselves. They're only really there to promote themselves. So we need to think about that. Now, using visual media is also an extremely important thing that will help us to, both on our company and our personal page, it's a great way to get shares, to get likes, to get people looking at what we're doing. Video, LinkedIn says that the length of our videos should probably usually be no further than about 15 seconds, 30 seconds maximum, but it's a great way of keeping your readers engaged. There's so many different platforms we can use now, Zoom, of course, being at the forefront of them, in terms of, sitting in front of a camera and being able to record ourselves and then sharing that very easily. It's a very easy thing to do. You literally just paste the address, of the LinkedIn video, of the video, and then attach it to LinkedIn by cut and pasting the LinkedIn link and putting it in the box. So it's a very easy thing to do. But you will find that your click-through rates increase if you do that. Okay, keep updates brief. So when creating posts for your page, keep your updates short and sweet. Use a simple title with an interesting image and a concise lead in order to encourage click-throughs. When the reader can understand fully the meaning of the post at a glance, they're much more likely to spend time on it. One tip that I would give you here in terms of creating compelling headlines for your articles, titles, is to think about putting a number in there, top 5 tips or top 3 mistakes, something like that. Once you do that, once you put a number in, it's a great way actually of getting people to be more likely to want to actually read your article and to be engaged. In terms of numbers, in terms of word numbers for your articles, 1,000 is the absolute maximum, but LinkedIn recommends probably no more than about 400 words max. So shorter is better. If you find yourself in the position of having a very long, compelling article, you're best, let's say over 1,000 words, you're best to chop it up into different articles of ideally around 400 words length, and then do them in a sequence, which can be a very good way of actually drawing your audience in and kind of almost like creating a bit of a pot boiler thing where people are waiting for the next episode. Engage your audience. Be sure to create content that encourages commenting and sharing in order to create a conversation with your readers. I noticed that Daniel did a poll, for instance, at the beginning of this session today, and we can do that, of course, on LinkedIn. We can very easily create polls, ask your clients a particular question that is going to be very incentivizing for them to respond to, and that's a good way of sort of gaining a bit more traction. Try to ask questions or hold contests that encourage readers to share their best story about a certain topic. And then you can, if you want, use paid content. It's something, it depends on the type of organization you have, and it depends on what your budget is. One thing I will tell you about paid in LinkedIn advertising, it doesn't come cheap, but different organizations are in different positions. It's worth thinking about, but the beauty of this kind of content is that you can find your audience very quickly, laser in on who exactly it is you want to send these messages to. So it's something that you might want to think about. And then obviously sharing company culture. Now, one of the things that my clients have been doing recently, which I've absolutely loved throughout this horrible lockdown time that we're in, is that they've been sharing pictures of themselves working from home. And I actually really love these images. I'm sure many of you have seen them on LinkedIn. It creates a wonderful corps d'esprit, a sense of us all being together right now in this crisis, making sense of this mad world, working from home, but crucially, sending out the message that business goes on. I mean, business is not the same. It will never be the same again, I'm sure, after this lockdown. But the main point is that we need to be sending out messages to create trust and to create confidence that business is still going on. So if you're sending pictures or putting pictures on your company page of your team still at it, at home, at their desk, but still serving the needs basically of their clients, that sends out an extremely good signal basically to your audience to show that we're all in it together and business still goes on. So that's a good thing to think about there. Optimize your page, much like Google and other search engines. LinkedIn has its own search parameters to ranking. Therefore, don't forget about SEO, especially in your About Us section. So what you need to be doing when you create your company page, if you haven't already, or if you have it, look at the About Us section. Make sure that you have the right number of keywords in there. So again, the company page will rank highly when people are looking for the services that you offer. And do share other content. Don't just share your own. There's a particular organization I've seen recently in the training space. They will remain nameless, but they're horribly shooting themselves in the foot right now, because all they are doing is sharing their own content. It looks awful. It makes it look like they're not part of a wider conversation. They should really be sharing, obviously having their own content on there, but sharing other thought leaders' content as well, so that they're showing that they're part of a wider conversation. And really, that's all I have for you right now. Thank you for listening. There'll be some Q&A at the end, where obviously feel free to ask me some questions. But I'm now going to hand over to Simon West of Nett Sales, who I know has some really valuable pointers to share with you regarding automation.
Fantastic. Just before Simon jumps in, I will introduce him. Thank you so much for that, Anthony. I hope everyone's got a good amount of notes from that one. So yes, we have Simon West. Mr. West is in the building. Obviously not Kanye, but we do have an expert in LinkedIn. He's going to show you some tips and tricks of how to drive leads. So please do, again, have your pens at the ready to take notes. Anthony did have to rush through a few things, and Simon is most likely going to have to do the same just to stay on track with time. However, we are going to be doing another session with the two for our members. So that's something that's going to be coming through to you guys in the next couple of weeks, a date for that. So they're going to be a dedicated chat or a dedicated webinar for our members with these two, where they'll be on the hot seat and you can grill them for as long as you want. I'm yet to, I'll be talking to them both about that shortly. Anyway, I'm not going to take up any more time. Simon, please take it away.
Brilliant, thanks. Right, so let's just get that screen up. So thanks, Daniel, and I think that's probably the best setup I could possibly have had from Anthony, because he's covered all of the bases about getting a profile in perfect shape, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how you can actually use that on on each day of the working week to try and get people coming towards you as leads rather than having to use other methods. So just to start off this, screen is going around, 1 second. So Anthony's done a great job, and what he's done is he's basically given you the profile you need. So the profile to stand out. He's given you that beautiful Bentley with the lovely orange stripe down the car. You know what it stands for. You might not want that particular car, but it's beautifully presented. It's well spec'd out, and it's exactly what you expect. So there's the starting point. So you've got your profile up and running. What are you going to do? Well, it's actually very simple. You're going to follow a process. Now, this is a daily process. And the whole aim of this process is to start by getting to know people and getting them to know you. Next, Anthony discussed a lot about trust. We're going to build trust with those people. And then you're going to allow them to buy from you. Now, I use the word buy here quite deliberately, because selling on LinkedIn is not the best thing to try. We talked about earlier on about drains and radiators. Drains are trying to sell on LinkedIn. Radiators are people who are allowing you to buy from them on LinkedIn. And I did pick up on a comment in the chat from Justin when he talked about asking people who connected with him why they're connecting and getting absolutely no reply. Yep, those are drains. They probably want to sell to you, and another good reason not to do it. So why? Well, it's very, very simple. If you don't have trust with the person, they are never going to buy from you. So no trust buy is no trust buy. It's that simple. So what do you do? Well, this might look a little bit involved, but looking in the top left-hand side, let's start by targeting your audience. So that means researching contacts, getting involved in group activity, and then connecting with relevant people. So let me talk about the targeting audiences. Depending upon whether you're a paid member or a free member will determine what you can do around searching for people. So if you've bought into Sales Navigator, and by the way, I would say if you are serious about using LinkedIn as a route that you're going to engage with every day, I would strongly recommend you look seriously at Sales Navigator, because that gives you a greater ability to interact with people, and it gives you a greater ability to search for the people you want to connect with on LinkedIn. So who are your target audience? I mean, I don't know who your target audience are. I know who my target audience are, but you know who your target audience are. So ask yourselves these questions. When you want to when you want to engage with people as a potential customer, Do they have a particular geographic location? Where are they in the world? What sort of job role are they? You know, are they a CEO of a company? Are they a manager? Are they an administrator? Are they a particular functional job role? Maybe they're a facilities manager or a salesperson. Whatever. What is that job role? Interestingly, groups on LinkedIn haven't got a good rep. They're not very engaging places to go. But what they do is they show people's interests. So, for example, if you wanted to target people who were involved in the telecoms industry, then using a search that involved searching for people who are members of groups that are discussing telecoms issues would allow you to identify those people who have an interest in telecoms, as well as who might have a job role related to telecoms, and also a company name that might be related to telecoms. And also, Anthony talked a lot about keywords. Use keywords, so search on keywords in people's summary to target your audience. And then, of course, the business attributes, the size of the company. And the size, by the way, is done in the number of people in that company, in bands. And I think you can now only get that in Sales Navigator. LinkedIn keep changing their search criteria, so I'm pretty sure as of today, you need Sales Navigator to be able to select the size company of people you want to target. There are various other attributes. You can find them as well as I can. Your goal is to have a total target audience of less than 30,000 people. Now, Daniel said at the start there are 667 million people on LinkedIn, so you're honing it down quite a lot. Now, why do I say a small target audience? Well, it's for this particular reason. When you're targeting people on LinkedIn, you want to be able to know what to send people. And if you target people tightly, they're all similar people. So you can write a piece of content for your ideal target audience, knowing that everybody you've targeted will be interested in that piece of content. So, you know, if you've got a very broad audience, then you're writing lots of different content to try and target lots of different people. So get a small audience. So what do you do with these people? Well, you're going to send connection messages to them. And yes, I would strongly recommend sending a personal connection message to somebody. So look at the list of people your search shows up and send those people who you think are interesting people that you'd like to be connected with, who'd be interested in connecting with you. Send them a targeted message. Mention something about their profile, something that links you together when you send that connection message. You can send as many connections as you wish a day. I would recommend limiting that to 30 or 40 for reasons I'll come on to in a bit. So that's the know bit. So you've started to get to know who your target audience are, and they're starting to get to know you. So where do we go next? Well, I said it's a process. The next bit in it is trust. And this is the bit that everybody forgets. What happens? Anthony described the process earlier. You send somebody sends you a connection request, you accept it, and the first thing that comes through is a spammy email saying, "Buy from me." Not ideal. They've gone straight from connecting, knowing, to engaging, buying. What's the answer? Goodbye. So you've got to go through the process of engaging people, building trust. So when they connect with you, send them a thank you message. Thanks for connecting. Interested to see that you're also an alumni of this university, or you're also in this industry, or you're in this part of the country, or you're interested in this, whatever it happens to be, build a connection with them. Send them a message thanking them. If they reply to you, brilliant. You're now starting to engage. So reply back to them, send them another message. This is a conversation. It's not a one-way diatribe. And then for all those people that you've connected with in the past, next is to start sharing relevant content. Anthony described the sort of content we're talking about. This is your chance to do it. You can pull up the message window and you can send somebody a message to say, "Hey, I've just seen this, somebody else's content, or I've just written this, my content. Thought you might be interested. It's talking about this particular area. Let us know what you think, or would love you to comment," something like that. You're not selling. You're simply letting people know that something exists there that's interesting to them. And send it. Send it to as many people as you think might be interested. This is the trust process. You're starting to build a relationship with this person by sharing stuff with them. And if they receive stuff from you that looks interesting, they're going to start to think, oh, that's good. That person thinks the same way as me. They like what I like. So they will start to trust you. And what happens when they start to trust you? Well, you can get to the point where people start to thinking that they might want to buy from you. So yeah, what happens when people buy? Well, they engage, they come back to you and say, yes, that's interesting. No, not interested. Okay, well, maybe reply to them. Why not? But they'll come back, and a lot of people will come back quite lukewarm. Well, I'm not really sure who you are, but what you're saying is interesting. So they'll ask questions. You know, how would you? How much? How does it work in this situation? All these sorts of engagement type questions. So this is your opportunity to explain to them why you're a good fit. So start to explore it. Maybe suggest a telephone call, a Zoom meeting, anything like that. That whole process is your opportunity to help people to buy from you. So that's the process. Know, trust, buy. As a summary, this is your daily process. And it's very, very important that you do it in this order. And I'll tell you why in a minute. You reply to every message. So if somebody sends you a message, reply to them. This is your first task of the day. Again, Anthony said it earlier. Other people have said it to you as well. Ask questions. Don't give closed answers. Ask questions of people. Always finish with that question. Never sell. No point in selling. People don't want to be sold to. You don't want to be sold to. I don't want to be sold to. Nobody wants to be sold to. Give people the opportunity to buy from you. Say thank you. So you've replied to all the messages that have come in, the good, the bad, and the interesting. Next, anybody that's connected with you, accepted your connection request, send them a message to say thank you. That's your second task. Your third task is to send 40 odd new connection requests. So go back to your search and find 40 people in there who look really interesting and send them a personalized connection request. A personalized connection request. The reason you do this after the reply and the thank you is because if those people accept the connection request whilst you're still doing the other jobs, you then send them a thank you message, you then get into a conversation, and you could spend all day. You're like painting the fourth bridge. You just keep going and going and going, and you never get to an end. So send the connection requests after the messaging tasks. And then as a final action, send 50 new messages to your contacts who are engaged with you, and share some great content. Something you've written, something somebody else has written that you think is really good. If it's something somebody else has written, there's nothing bad about that. But put your own spin on it. Explain in your message why you think it's interesting, why you think this person would be interested in this. And that's it. Now, I believe that will take you 90 minutes each day to do that process. So have you got 90 minutes each day? Probably. Have you got 90 minutes each day to generate 80 new connections, 20 good conversations, and maybe 3 or 4 new leads every week? But in those terms, I would suggest that most people would be very happy to spend 90 minutes of their day. And it doesn't have to be done during a working day. It could be done first thing, could be done last thing, could be done between other tasks, could be split over the day. But it's something that needs to be done. It's a repetitive process, I'm afraid. For me, it's one of the most rewarding processes you can do because you get to talk to and engage with some fabulous people. Well, it should be fabulous people because they're people that you've chosen to engage with who are right like your target audience. So they're an ideal audience for you. So that's what I would suggest to you. Now, if you really, really are too busy, then there is the option to get somebody else to do this for you. And I say this with a massive word of warning. I would personally never recommend outsourcing to anybody you don't know and trust extremely well. I mean, we do this for some of our clients. This is what we do. But be very, very careful because an awful lot of people out there will do I've got a clever automated way, which is actually not allowed in LinkedIn, by the way. and I'm just going to put this on automatic for you. Now, those are the messages that you don't want to receive, the nasty spammy messages. So I would stay away from it and do this yourself. But if you're absolutely, you've got no time for this, and you want somebody else's help, then, please feel free to get in touch, and we're happy to talk. But I'd want somebody to have done this for themselves. And we're busy doing this for a lot of other people, but I'd want somebody to have done it for themselves before ever considering doing any work for them, just because that feels like the right thing to do. So that's where we are. That's where we've got to. That's what I'd recommend. I think we've got a bit of time left for questions, Daniel. So I've not been able to check the questions while I've been talking, but if there are any questions, then maybe we should try and address some of those.
We most certainly do have time for questions. Just going to run through a couple of things before we get into that. Thank you so much, Simon, for that. Just going to switch it back over to my screen now. Fantastic. So yeah, we've had loads of questions come in. I don't know if we're going to be able to get through them all, but we are going to try. Literally so many questions, over 20, easily. So, I mean, thank you for staying around, everyone that stayed around for this webinar. I hope you found it profitable. I'm sure you did. There's going to be ongoing support for all of our CPD members. I know we've got a lot of new people with us today, so if you are interested in becoming a member, some information will be coming out on how to do that. There's going to be, like I said, another interactive session with both Anthony and Simon coming soon for our members, so that's going to be something to look out for. Communication will be going out about that shortly to our members. So yeah, without further ado, let's move on to this Q&A. So we had some questions sent in earlier that was about, pre-webinar. So we had some really keen people send in a few questions. A few questions before the webinar, which is fantastic to see. We always do enjoy receiving those questions. So we had one from Ian. He said, I would like to ask whether it is recommended to write our personal profile in the first or third person.
Great. Shall I just kick off with this one?
Yeah.
Absolutely the first person, never the third person. You want your profile to read in a very conversational style. It needs to be engaging. You're never going to engage your audience, unfortunately, if you write it in the third person. You're almost holding your audience at a distance. In fact, if you look at my profile, you'll see that one of the first things I put there is, thank you for taking the time to look at my profile. I want people to feel as if I'm about to have a cup of coffee with them over a table, and it's all very, pally and conversational. So always the first person.
Fantastic. Okay, brilliant. I think that's sufficient for sure. Helena sent in a question also pre-webinar. Could you please ask if we are giving value such as reports, videos, white papers, and tips on LinkedIn, is there any other type of content we should be giving out for more engagement?
Simon?
Yes. I would turn it around on you. Yes, there's lots of content. What is it that your target audience would most want to see from you? If it's a very young audience, then my experience is they engage better with video than they do written content and short, sharp video. If it's I used to say if it's an office-based audience, but that doesn't happen today. But if it's people who were based in office, maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable playing video in the office. So I would say think very, very carefully about your target audience and spread it across people who are both auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learners, and build a mix of content that you can give to them.
Definitely. I would actually like to throw in a couple of pence on this one as well. So I think something that's really interesting is a tool. So something that's going to be useful for them to use. So it might be a certain type of work calendar or diary that's kind of niche for their type of work, or any other tools that you have that might be profitable. It might be like a calculator or a special type of calculator that is used within a certain profession for example. So something that really gets them, that's useful for them and that's branded. So they're always using it and being exposed to your brand while they're using it, I'd say. That would also be a good thing to get out there. Okay, moving on. I'm trying to run through these questions. We got one from Charlotte. She says, where is all the info on this on LinkedIn? Where do we find most searchable keywords?
That's a very good question. I mean, to be honest, it's more what is it that you're looking to promote? What is it that you're noted for? What are the solutions that you provide? That's really the way that we want to look at it. I know that I did use the analogy of a company with a website, and Google Analytics does offer us the ability to look at search terms and so on. But a bit like what Simon said with the other question, I would think about what it is you give, what it is you offer, and take it from there and get your keywords from there, really.
Okay, Simon, do you want to add something onto that?
It's just a technical point. Anthony clearly mentioned search engine optimization. I mean, if you're running campaigns on Google or Facebook, you can look at the key terms there that are working well for you, and can also translate that into LinkedIn.
Definitely, very good point. Absolutely. If you do have a website and you've done your Google Analytics on it, that will give you some ideas as to what your search terms might be. That's a very good point, Simon. Yeah.
Brilliant. I knew Simon had something there. All right. So we've got one that's asking about frequency of posting. How frequently should we post? Don't answer just yet. Both of you just have a think about it. How frequently should people be posting? I've got one more poll for everyone just to partake in. And I just want to find out how useful you're finding this webinar. Is there a lot of information that you haven't come across before? Please just answer that one. It's up now. Just a quick one so we can get straight back into these questions and answers. And if there is obviously something that, that you are aware of, then please ask a question on something that you're not aware of as well. Ask something that you might have been thinking about, that you would really, that needs a bit of a deep dive and a deep answer. So please don't be afraid to ask a challenging question. Just throw it into the chat for us. We're at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, perfect. Thank you guys for participating in that one. Right, jumping straight back into the questions. Yes, so sorry guys, go for it.
Simon, do you want to go first?
How frequently should we be posting?
It'd be very easy to say, what does your audience expect? But I think the answer is at least weekly. At least weekly, and often, if you've got something really interesting to say, then every 3 or 4 days. But I would say once a week, something from you is probably the bare minimum, and then more often as you see fit. Would you add anything to that, Anthony?
Well, the funny thing is that LinkedIn, the official LinkedIn recommendations are every day, including weekends. But I kind of agree with where Simon's coming from. I wonder if actually there's an element of overkill there. I think that we might need to try to strive. I mean, Simon did say once a week was the bare minimum. I agree with him. We want to be striving, I would argue, to be posting probably for at least once Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think that these apparently are the optimal times, LinkedIn has said, when people tend to be more likely to engage with your content. Mondays are very bad for lots of organizations because they tend to have internal meetings, and Fridays people are tending to sort of wind down a bit and not really paying much attention to things. So people tend to say, or certainly LinkedIn seems to indicate, that it would be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday around 10 to 11 or 12 seems to be a good time. So I would try to hit those times if you can, but you've got to start somewhere. And if all you can do is once a week, don't let that put you off. If that's all you can do, great. The main thing is to dip your toe in the water and to get started.
Actually, sorry, one other thing to add is it's about the quality. of material as well. I mean, if you're posting something daily, I really don't think you've got the time to deliver quality content every single day. I'd far prefer to see something really good once a week than, you know, a fifth of that effort once a day.
Yeah, I think there's a caveat on that. I do agree with you, Simon, about quality, and I'm a huge fan of quality. I guess that, you know, there will be a mix, or hopefully we'll get to the point where there's a mix of the quality stuff that we've crafted and created ourselves. But also remember, we might be sharing other people's thoughts and articles and posts on things as well with our own comment. Obviously, very important if we're sharing someone else's article or post to put a comment at the top. And so that kind of gets us out of the quandary of, oh my goodness, I don't have enough quality content to post.
Yeah, brilliant. Just to share a bit of insight on that last post, if you did put in not at all, don't worry, you're in good company. There's a lot of people that are new to LinkedIn apparently on the webinar, so it's good. I hope you're all taking your notes. If you are one of the top performers, 80 already implementing all of this. There are a few people that are like that. Please do come with questions. We had 7% of people that feel like they know it all already, which is fantastic. I'm so happy. Please do ask any challenging questions. What did you come onto the webinar to learn? Please do ask a question, throw it in the box. Okay, so articles versus posts. We have this from Nima. Which is the priority? Articles versus posts.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? I'm not even sure I know what the difference necessarily is. I think
maybe articles, you might be referring to something that's off the page, that's maybe on the website.
Blog articles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Simon, do you want to?
Yeah, I think the posts are the items that people post on their company page or their profile, say this is what I'm up to. So yeah. It's short, sharp messages, like a couple hundred words. The articles are the effectively LinkedIn's blog area, where you write a longer form, so big image at the top, text underneath, and get comments at the bottom. And the posts are what appears in full in people's daily stream, and the articles get referenced but don't get displayed in full. You can actually put videos into posts now, which is quite interesting, because unless somebody's turned it off, those videos will start playing when somebody looks at them in their daily feed. So that might be a good place to start if you're looking for one or the other.
I agree with those comments. I think video, for me, I think we need both. I think both posts and articles are fine, but I think if video is by far the best way of getting shares, of getting traction. But I also think if you don't have video, I think having some kind of nice image is very important as well. LinkedIn has definitely done a number of pieces of research on this to show that articles and posts that have a compelling image are much more likely to be read and to get shares and reshares. So that's what I would say there. So it's thinking about the quality of the content, thinking about the imaging, and thinking about the wording, really.
Daniel, I've seen a couple of questions coming up about numbers and stuff.
Okay, go for it.
Can I just, so there's a couple of people commented in similar ways. One asked, is it possible to message a lot of people at the same time? The answer is no, you've got to do messages one at a time. And others in terms of how many connections can I send and so on. There is this thing supposedly that you can only send 3,000 connections. That's actually not true. But you can have a limit put on you if you send too many connection requests inappropriately. And equally, if you try and message too much or search too much, if you're on a free profile, you'll be told that you've reached commercial limits and you've now got to pay for a license. But that actually brings on to another area that doesn't get talked about much, which is worth touching on very briefly, and that's there are some plugins that you can get into Chrome that claim to automate LinkedIn. There's a very simple comment I make: stay away from them. There's a variety of reasons for that. The first one is that it makes you look automated, but the primary one is that LinkedIn can see these plugins, and if they see you using them, and they can see you using them, they will block you. So you might think you're being clever doing them. Trust me, it's really not worth the effort. The number of people we've had to dig out of brown smelly stuff for trying these and then getting themselves blocked or banned is unbelievable. So that was all I wanted to say.
Yeah, very good points there.
Okay, perfect. So another question coming in from Odetta, would really value knowing, would it be, no, sorry, I had another one before that, which was really good. What different types of content should you be posting on a company page versus a personal page? So if you have both, what should be the difference there? I think is a really good question. I lost it in the feed, so I can't say who it came from, but it did stand out to me.
I think actually it's fairly similar. We're just trying to radiate what we're doing and what we're a part of. I mean, thinking of posts that I found to be very successful over the years, if you're at an event and you're standing next to a client and that client is particularly happy or looks happy in the photo, those sorts of images get a lot of traction, because what's happening is your audience are vicariously looking at that and they're going, oh, that looks like a happy client. Maybe I too can be receiving this great service or something. There's a certain vicarious element there. But I don't personally view it as being massively different. We're trying to radiate as much as we can, whether it's our personal page or our company page, just as we need to be sharing white papers and insights and maybe photos and images from successful events. We can still do that from our company page as well. So for me, but the only thing to remember is that with the company page exists to get a sense of your brand, the brand of your company, I would say, out into the marketplace. Well, obviously, ultimately, your personal profile is more of a direct link that you'll have with your sort of followers, as it were. And so that's why, certainly for those of us who are in smaller businesses, or particularly if it's an owner-managed business, then we really need to be spending a lot of time on both, but especially on our personal profile, because ultimately we are our brand. People are buying from us.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, we got another one that follows on straight from that, I think, Sue Jackson. If you're a sole trader, and there's probably a few in the webinar now, is it advisable to have both personal and company, or would just one do?
I personally think it's good to have both. I don't know what Simon thinks, but I think it's very useful to have both.
Yeah, I think both as well. There's lots of reasons why, but I think both. I know it presents content challenges of creating additional content, but build a content calendar. Have a yearly content calendar and go looking for content. It'll help every part of your business, not just this bit.
Yeah. And also, if you're in any doubt about content creation, if you can, as I'm sure many of you do, you've got happy, satisfied clients. I always think it's great to get some sort of something around how you helped a client out of a hole.
Yeah.
Is always a good way.
Brilliant. Okay, more questions coming through. Got something about hashtags here. How to use hashtags appropriately on LinkedIn.
Simon, do you want to go first, and then?
Hashtags usually equated with like Instagram and more of the hipster like Twitter. So yeah, would be interesting to hear that one.
Yes, there's a body of thought that it helps, and I don't know if it does actually help in practice. I mean, the idea is the same as Instagram, the same as Twitter, the same as Facebook. You put hashtags for your for the key points of your message. I haven't done the research myself to know whether it is effective or not, or whether I'm just, jumping on a bandwagon that doesn't go anywhere. So I don't have an opinion other than I'd be interested to look at the empirical facts. Anthony, any thoughts?
I think my feeling is it's not going to hurt you using them so long as you use them in the right way. Just for those of you perhaps that are not necessarily fully aware what a hashtag is and what it does, the idea is that if we include them in a post or an article, what it does is it will connect, the hashtag will put a kind of a term there as to what our article or post is relating to. And it means that if people on LinkedIn are searching for similar articles, if you've tagged it in that way, you've hashtagged it in that way, your article is more likely to come up in that person's feed, and so they're more likely to see your article. So potentially it can be, you know, a good way of kind of promoting yourself as an expert there. That's the theory behind them, for those of you that are not aware of that. But the only thing I would say is that if you are going to use them, and I by the way, I would probably recommend that you do use them, but don't overuse them. I think where we run into difficult territory is I sometimes see people posting things on LinkedIn and they've got about 20 hashtags at the end of their article. Not only does it look awful, but it's complete overkill. It's unnecessary. It tends to make you look a little bit desperate. So I would not do that. Try to limit it, LinkedIn says, to about 3 to 4 hashtags. And if you can, try to put those hashtags in the body of your post rather than tagged on at the end. I know sometimes that's hard to do. But the other thing that you might want to think about doing, which is sort of allied to hashtagging, is tagging. I don't know how many of you have heard of tagging, but tagging, of course, is simply where you put the name of someone. Let's say you're at an event with a particular client. You might want to put the name of that client as a tag into the post. And what that does is it alerts your client to the fact that they've just been tagged. They get an email, they're notified on LinkedIn. But the best thing about it is you then get seen in that person's first degree connections. So essentially what you're doing is you're linking yourself with that client, with that company, and that will be seen throughout their first tier connections. So it's quite a good way of gently, surreptitiously sneaking into their network and being seen and broadening your own kind of, you know, your own sort of how far you're seen in that sector, your own sort of dimensions of where you sit in that sector. So it's worth thinking about that as well.
Brilliant, brilliant. Okay, this one's from Lawrence. He says, I've been told that comments are better than likes to raise your profile. Is that correct? And if so?
Yep. My feeling about that one is absolutely too many of us fall back into a comfort zone of just liking this and liking that, but it doesn't really do very much. It's much better to be more proactive if we can. And if we have something to say, and very often I see people make comments and I may vehemently agree or disagree or whatever, do feel free to share your comments because to make a comment, because that way other people will look at that comment. And remember, if you think about any kind of social media platform, what is going on, it's a public forum, it's a conversation. You're wanting to be part of that conversation. And the best way to be a part of that conversation, obviously, is to comment on things. But don't comment just for the sake of commenting, because occasionally I see people chiming in and I'm thinking, well, hang on, you haven't really added very much to what was said initially. You know, try to resist the temptation to chime in if you have nothing of value to add. But if you do, then absolutely get involved and leave a comment.
Yeah. Okay, did you want to add anything, Simon, for that one?
No, that's fine.
Okay, we got another one from Odetta. She likes to ask, okay, we was talking about videos before, but what is the ideal video length for LinkedIn?
Yeah, I mean, we said 15 to 30 seconds. I mean, LinkedIn does recommend 15 seconds. Up to 30 seconds is probably acceptable. If you look at all the research on capturing people's attention and retaining people's attention, much beyond 30 seconds, not as a weighty piece, but as something in a post or to catch someone's attention, I don't think you want to go beyond 30 seconds.
Agreed. I mean, we've all done it. We've all put videos on there that have been exceptionally longer than that. And I have done that in the past and managed to get lots of likes and reshares. But usually speaking, I mean, people are just so fickle now. We're all so fickle, myself included, and beyond 30 seconds. And I'm sorry, we're just all away on another planet, aren't we, really? So.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, I'm going to take this time just to run another quick poll. And then we've got maybe another question afterwards. So if you could all just participate in this final poll for me, that would be much appreciated. It was done on the fly. I just want to get an understanding if there is any more non-members here, if you would like to be invited to this walkthrough, if you want more information on that, that we're going to be hosting with Anthony and Simon in the coming weeks. So if you want to be a part of that walkthrough, let me know if that's something you'd like to be contacted about. I'm going to give you guys 10 more. Maybe Anthony and Simon, while I'm waiting for these results, if you could have a look through the chat and see if there's any question that you would like to answer for the last one.
Yeah, I was just looking at a couple where they were looking at limits to the number of connections you can send in a day, and the number of anything you can do on LinkedIn generally. Once you're a paid member, you get higher limits. As a free member, I believe it's around about 30 searches in a month you can do. Maybe it's up to 100 now. They keep changing it. But LinkedIn will notify you very quickly if you're hitting limits. There is, I'm told, a theoretical limit of 30,000 connections for a profile. I've not been able to test it, so I can't validate that for you. And clearly LinkedIn only show 500 plus, so you can't search for people with lots of people in the network. But basically the message is very simple. The more you pay LinkedIn, the more rights you get to use a volume of things. And also they give you a degree more latitude. So they tend to warn you if you've done something wrong rather than just blocking you, if you're a paying profile for fairly obvious reasons. So that's what I've seen a number of questions about that on there. Anything you've picked up, Anthony?
No, I totally agree with what you said just there. There was a question I saw here, which is it acceptable to have two LinkedIn profiles if I have two very different businesses with different target audiences? And the simple answer is, I'm afraid, no, you can't have your cake and eat it and have two different profiles. There is a way, and I did do it in one incarnation, where I did actually have, I like to think of myself as being relatively entrepreneurial here and there. So I did have two business ventures, both of which had rather different audiences. And there is a way of putting different roles on your profile, and that's fine. But you can't have two separate profiles. And you just need to think about the messaging. I think really what will happen when you write your profile is you can outline your two different businesses, but you need to bear in mind that if you've got two very different target audiences, you don't want to kind of muddy the pond a bit and confuse your audience. So you have to be careful there. But no, it would have to be done in the one. And honestly, my own feeling is really that probably one enterprise will probably take center stage more than the other. So in other words, if you find that one of your target audiences is more likely to be reachable on LinkedIn, then obviously prioritize them above the other target audience. But it has to be on the one profile.
Fantastic.
Just to add one very brief thing to that, to Daniel. Another way around that is really simple. If you've got somebody else working in the other business, is if you focus on one and get the other person to focus on the other.
Yeah, totally agree, Simon. Very good point.
Brilliant. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, for your patience. I mean, we've run a few minutes over, but thank you for sticking around, for those who did, for answering all the polls, for engaging, for taking down notes. Please go off and apply. We will be, like I said, doing a walkthrough with these two guys. So watch out for that coming up in the coming weeks. And yeah, I've enjoyed it so much. Thank you for joining us. Anthony, last words?
No, I just want to encourage anyone that perhaps has any other questions, do get in touch. I work with organizations of all sizes to optimize their profiles. So if you have any other questions, feel free to link up with me on LinkedIn, and very happy to help, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Simon?
Yes, same for me. If anybody wants any help, wants to talk further, connect with me on LinkedIn, give me a phone, whatever. I'm always happy to talk to anybody about LinkedIn, and just prepare to have your ear bent.
Fantastic. And like I said, we're going to be doing that walkthrough with our members. for next week, we're going to be here, same time, same place. Links will be going out. There'll also be the recording of this webinar going out shortly with the slides. So please watch out in your inbox for those, and the webinar in response to the poll today for next week. So thank you guys for hanging around and for sharing your time with us. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cheers.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Yes.
Bye-bye.